Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 123rd Annual General Meeting of Grimsby Town Football Club PLC. Excuse me. I think most of you are familiar faces, so I'm sure you'll be reasonably well aware of what today's procedure is. There'll be the formal statutory meeting, followed by a general, shall we say, open question session where the directors will be able to take any questions that you feel are appropriate. I'm sure you're all pretty familiar with the format for the statutory meeting, but I am required to obviously go through one or two points with you. First of all, before I actually start, I've been asked by Mr. Elsom to give his apologies for not being able to attend today. He desperately wanted to attend, as it's his first annual general meeting as the club president, but unfortunately a family funeral has required his attendance in Ireland, so he can't make it. But he asked me last night to ring and give his apologies. All of the business for today's meeting are ordinary resolutions, with the exception of item 4 on the agenda. I'll give you some more information about item 4 when we get there. That is a special resolution which will require a 75% majority. The rest of the resolutions are ordinary resolutions, which is a 50% majority. All resolutions will be taken initially on a show of hands, unless a poll vote should be called for. A poll vote needs to be called for before the declaration of the result of a show of hands. Excuse me. A poll vote can be called for by the chairman of the meeting, by two shareholders together, or by an individual shareholder owning more than 10% of the issue. Second item on the agenda is the director's report and the audited accounts of the company for the year ended 31st of May 2014. Again, to open the resolution, a proposer and a seconder, please, if I may. Someone propose the accounts? Lady at the back.
Name, please. Name, please.
Jean Houson, Houson.
Thank you.
And the seconder, please. Now, before I open the accounts for any questions that anybody may have, there is one point that I do need to correct. The director's report says that it's Mr. D. Roberts that will be standing for election today, or re-election I should say, in accordance with the Articles of Association. That was corrected in the drafting process to Mr. John Fenty. It's actually John's turn to stand up and be re-elected this year. Unfortunately, somewhere between the draft accounts and the actual publishing of the accounts, it's reverted back to Mr. Roberts. But I will obviously, again, that will be dealt with. Again, before dealing with any questions that you may have on the accounts, which is if you ask either myself or indeed the auditor, if I could introduce Mr. Nixon, the company's auditor, just to read out the formal audit report, and then we'll move on to any questions that you may have. Mr. Nixon, please.
Thank you, Mr. Harley. Again, just in keeping with the convention of the previous years, I'll just restrict the reading to the actual opinion rather than go through the full audit report. It's quite lengthy. So it's our opinion on the financial statements, and this is the report of the independent auditors to the members of Grimsby Town Football Club PLC. In our opinion, the financial statements give a true and fair view of the state of the company's affairs at 31st of May 2014, and if its loss for the year then ended, have been properly prepared in accordance with United Kingdom generally accepted accounting practice, and have been prepared in accordance with the requirements of the Companies Act 2000.
So on that basis then, all those in favour of adopting the accounts, please? And is anybody against? Okay, thank you very much. Item 3 is to elect directors, and as you're probably aware, there are two items to deal with today. First of all, Mr. Philip Day was co-opted to the board on the 28th of November 2013. So in accordance with the articles, he stands for election to the board today. And then, as I just mentioned, Mr. Fenty, in accordance with the articles by rotation, will be standing for re-election. In view of the fact they are two distinct aspects, I will deal with the resolutions independently. So first of all, for the election of Mr. Philip Day, can I have a proposer and a seconder for the resolution before opening it for discussion, please?
Name, please, sir.
Brian Turner.
Thank you.
And the lady at the front, I think, is the seconder. and Mr Philip Day will just say a few words.
Thank you, Steve. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I was co-opted onto the board a year ago, today in fact. I have been a supporter of Grimsby Town. My first match here was 1958, and I've been a season ticket holder for many, many years, and have supported the club through thick and thin. I was asked to join the board because of my specialism as a solicitor, and in particular a commercial property solicitor, and I have, since being on the board, I thought when I retired from the partnership of Wilkin Chapman that I was going to have an easy time. I seem to have spent more time at Blundell Park and at meetings to do with the new stadium than I ever spent in the office. So John Fenty knew how to get me on board, and I don't think I anticipated the time I would be spending. But having said that, I've been absolutely delighted to assist in what I hope will be a great future for this club at a new stadium. There's still a lot of work to do, and we are making progress, as there will no doubt be questions later, but I am absolutely delighted to be on board and helping in that way. I also have, in the year, had to assist a couple of players with particular legal problems that they may have had, particularly with regard to their driving. It's always helpful for the players to have a shoulder to cry on, perhaps, or somebody to talk to on these things, and other matters which crop up with players which have a legal aspect to them. So, ladies and gentlemen, I do offer myself for election to the board today, and I'm happy to answer any questions anyone.
Accordingly, in accordance with the articles, John offers himself for re-election. Could I have a proposer and a seconder? Proposer, gentlemen, there.
Sorry, Trevor Knight. Oh, thank you, Trevor.
And I'll be surprised if there were any questions for John specifically about his re-election, but obviously I'm required to ask. Does anybody have any questions for John on this specific point? Okay. All those in favour? And anybody against? Thank you very much. So John is duly re-elected.
And to repeat, thank you for the confidence shown in me.
Right, item 4. Just a little bit of background. Some of you may already be familiar with this. All companies, even quoted companies, have certain rules and regulations imposed on them by company law with regard to the allotment of shares. When a company issues shares, it has to make sure that each individual shareholder's percentage that they own in the issued share capital of the company they're given the opportunity to make sure that it's the same after a new share issue as it was before that share issue. It's what's called preemption rights. Most public limited companies request from the shareholders permission to waive those preemption rights for the allotment of shares. Now, I think, as you all know, just to reiterate, and it may well be good just to remind everybody, that there is no authorised share capital to the company's issued share. The company's share capital. Anybody at any time can apply for shares. There are no limits imposed on that. So shares are always freely available for everybody anybody that wants them. However, once every 5 years, the Board of Directors is required to check with the shareholders that they can continue to issue shares to whom they like, on what basis they like, without applying the preemption rights. So it's basically to renew the Directors' authority to give anybody any shares who wants them. And naturally, Grimsby Town Football Club will welcome any share contributions that come their way. So the resolution, as I say, is to make sure that the directors have that power. It is renewed every 5 years. So on that basis, can I have a proposer and a seconder for the resolution, please? We'll go for someone different, gentleman at the back. So, all those in favour? And all those against, if there is anybody. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 5. The reappointment of Weaver Root as the company's auditors. Weaver Root will be reappointed the company's auditors, as there's been no proposal received at the Company's Register Office to suggest that anybody else other than Weaver Root should be reappointed the auditors. Therefore, I will declare that they have duly been reappointed auditors. The only part that requires the shareholders' authority is permission for the Board of Directors to agree their remuneration. So can I just have a proposer for that part of the resolution, please? Ian?
Green.
And a seconder? All those in favour? And anyone against? Okay, thank you very much. And finally, item 6, which I'm sure you by now will realise will not take very long, it's any other business. Any other business is any other statutory business. If anybody wants to bring anything up to the annual general meeting, they have to do so within 21 days of the annual general meeting. Nobody has said that they do. Therefore, there is no other ordinary business of the company. So accordingly, I will declare the 123rd annual general meeting closed.
Once again, thanks for all your attendance. It's great to see you all. But as usual, it's open game. You can ask any questions you like, and we'll do our best to answer them as we're able to. Yes, Dave.
You've been on about, for the new ground, you want a large retail outlet to help with the development.
Okay.
I don't think there's one in Grimsby. The Range.
Okay, I think the Range has moved into the old Texas store, the Do-It-All store.
Home base, yeah.
Home base store, sorry.
One in Scunthorpe,
Yeah.
bigger than your Tesco.
Sure.
That was all I was going to say.
Appreciate that, thank you. We did actually have them on the radar, but unfortunately that went away when Do-It-All site became available.
Can I just say one thing? Unfortunately today I've got to leave the meeting quite early. I don't suppose anybody does have any specific questions for me, but if they do, ask me. The gentleman at the back's laughing, I'm not sure why.
Tough.
So, as it's the informal part of the meeting, I'm unfortunately going to make a quick exit. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you,
You're
Steve.
welcome.
Appreciate
I'll
that.
see you soon, folks.
Cheers, Ian. Any other questions? Yes, please.
Dave again. Mr. Fenty, you put a lot of money into the club. Is there any reason why you wouldn't take the title of chairman again?
I guess it's not come up. At the end of the day, I am the nominated director to speak on behalf of the club, and it's sensible to speak through one voice, whoever that may be, for obvious reasons. If you don't, you get pulled apart. That used to happen many years ago when individual directors had their say. So that's a policy that's currently in place. But in real terms, we're a working board, a hard-working board. I think it's probably the best working board that I've sat on in terms of support to, particularly myself. That's been the case. And I'm really pleased to have Philip, Steve on board, the trust members. There's a lot of good stuff going on, and hopefully that will culminate in a relocation. Okay. I think there's one thing I'd like to say. In the last few days, sort of about 10 days, the Telegraph has been producing a number of articles, a series of articles, which we're really pleased to have seen rolled out for the simple reason that, by and large, the objectors have had the biggest say over the last, let's say, 2 years since Peaks Parkway was flagged publicly. So it's been really useful to try and get a little bit of meat on the bone and some clarity in the direction of travel that the club is taking. So that's been useful. The petition that's out there, there's 2 petitions. We run one in the club, it's hard copy, where people can, who won't necessarily want to do it electronically, can sign a hard copy. And of course there's the electronic petition that's out there as well, that's been somewhat touted around. Just because of those articles, we've seen a rush of blood, and we've now gone from about 7,000 to just over 8,000 within those few days. So it does show that there's a groundswell of support. And when you bear in mind that the information rolling out related to this project has been somewhat slow, and for obvious reasons, we're evolving the project. So, people can draw conclusions, possibly wrong conclusions, in the first instance against fears they might have about traffic congestion and all sorts of different things. Until the club starts to have its say, it doesn't necessarily bring everybody on board. So, to some degree, we're really pleased that these articles have been out. It does follow about well, actually, I can go back. It was in 2008 when the council resolved to work with the football club in an effort to relocate, and we've been working with officers throughout that time in a cooperation of a sort, whereby we've explored a number of sites. We did actually do a sequential appraisal as the football club, and we looked at various sites that could actually accommodate. The important aspect, Dave, which you mentioned, was the retail. Initially, we had to go through a process of looking at retail alone, because it was felt that houses and a football stadium don't necessarily go together. We didn't necessarily agree with that principle, but at the end of the day we accepted we had to go through a process of exclusion. We always knew, right from going back to Greatcoats, that converting retail to support the enabling development was going to be difficult. We knew that from day one when we begun these new discussions, but nevertheless we had to go through a process of soft market testing whether there was an appetite for a retail enabling development. Clearly that takes a period of time, broadly a year that took, and going through that it was quite clear that retail alone couldn't enable this scheme to happen. So what we had to do is look at the next best option, and frankly houses are the kid on the block. This area needs houses. I'm sure nobody wants them in their backyard, but at the end of the day we've got some fantastic things going on in terms of renewables. There is an intrinsic demand for new housing anyway, which is running at around 300 to 400 houses, and with this potential increased demand, there is going to be a need for new housing locally. We've just seen in Scunthorpe they've given a permission, a planning permission for the Lincolnshire Lakes project. That's for 6,000 homes. 3,000 of those are going to come forward in the first stage. And as part of that, they've given Scunthorpe 66 acres, it's a council-led scheme, 66 acres to accommodate a relocation for Scunthorpe United, who of course did relocate previously in 1988, I think it was. So they're on their second relocation, and it's going great guns. We understand they're going to be submitting a detailed planning application as early as next April. So they're riding on the back of houses alone, and the objective is for the Scunthorpe Stadium to become the hub for that community. Clearly we haven't got a scheme as big as that going on locally, but there is an opportunity to attach housing to our scheme as well as retail, and I guess there's two extremes. It was somewhat promoted in the newspaper last week, and it didn't necessarily come across as a clarification of two scenarios. To some people it could look like we were looking for retail and housing scaled up. That's not the case, so if I can explain. On the one hand, let's call it scenario A, we're looking for something in the order of around 1,488 houses to go along with enabling the relocation of the football club, creating a community stadium, and that would be with ancillary retail to support those houses. Now those houses aren't necessarily all going to go adjacent with the development we're talking about on Peaks Parkway. They could be, for instance, in other areas of the town. And we are talking to a number of landowners who have engaged on a basis whereby they would give up some of the land receipt sufficient to catalyse our project. So that's on the one hand, one extreme, and the other extreme is that we get predominantly retail and a small element of houses. So the theory is maybe 400 to 600 houses plus a large amount of retail. When I say a large, it could be a relocation of an existing retailer, which I won't go into detail about. So they're the kind of two extremes, but in truth it's quite likely to be something in the middle. So the enabling development, which is absolutely vital to deliver this scheme, as has been the case for delivering the bulk of relocations across the country. You know, football clubs, I don't think there's one out there that's put their hand in their own pocket and delivered a complete relocation. It's always come akin to an enabling development, or as an extreme example, the KC Stadium, that cost 53 million. The council invested that money from, of course, the telephone company that they sold. So the enabling development is essential to catalyse this scheme. Of course, the football club has to raise some funds, and we've got a substantial amount of work to do on that, and backing and support from directors and loans and so on. All of that's been worked up, and we of course do have a financial plan akin to relocation, with indicative support and income from the enabling development as broadly described. So things are going very well. Council's been cooperative in listening to what we've been asking for. We've submitted our interest to NELC, and it's now in the politicians' hands, and you know, it's a matter of time before we get a decision whether we can secure an interest in the land at Peaks Parkway. That's our objective. When we get that land, an interest in that land, let's say for instance it's for 5 years or whatever ultimately the council agree to, we have then got to bring forward a viable project financially that's able to get a planning permission, and that means we've got to jump through all of the hoops necessary to get a viable planning permission, and ultimately councillors will have the last say. It's clear that objectors have got points that need to be resolved, issues that and concerns that they're bringing forward, and the football club is hugely conscious of the fact that we have to create a development that least impacts on the residents, and that is a promise. That is something that we'll try to achieve. In terms of the problems that's been flagged so far, the objections, we've talked about wrong location. Well, that's what's been put forward. Well, you could argue that actually this is very central to both Grimsby, Cleethorpes and surrounding villages. It's on a main arterial route which you can get from both directions, and as far as we're concerned, and through the sequential appraisal that we've done, you couldn't actually find a better location to go. Then there's of course congestion. People have talked about congestion. Well, of course there'll be some additional activities during the daytime because we need 7-day incomes. So there'll be other activities you know, on the site of the stadium. But at the same time, predominantly, we play on a Tuesday night, 7:45, when the roads are very least busy, and of course at 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, when again the roads are not that busy. And if you consider that when we play on a Saturday afternoon now, in the height of summer in particular, we get traffic backing up right down to the flyover and beyond. That congestion will be removed, and there'll be a clear line into Cleethorpes, which will be good for business. So we'll remove a substantially congested problem on Grimsby Cleethorpes Road, and I don't believe that this scheme will impact too adversely on a Saturday afternoon on Peaks Parkway. So you know, that's the layman's take, but of course through the planning process we will have to demonstrate through a highways impact assessment that our scheme works. So there should be a whole host of comfort there for those that's objecting, and they should be comforted again by the knowledge that ultimately councillors will have the last say. You know, the council will have the last say through the planning process. So we're not looking to ride roughshod over the community. We want to do this with the community, and as we do approach the submission of a planning permission, planning application I should say, which I hope we get to, there will be a raft of consultation, engagement. We'll find out exactly what people are concerned about, and we will look to adjust the scheme as it can best suit. So you know, we're really hopeful that in the near future we'll get a positive decision from the council that gives us the credibility to be able to engage the landowners that we need to unlock the enabling development to make this work. So there's some positive things going on at the moment, and we just have to be a little bit patient to see how it unfolds. Okay? Yes, please,
Yeah,
Dave.
sorry.
You do very well.
When the council was voting for Greatcoats, a lot of councillors that were season ticket holders or supporters of Grimsby weren't allowed to vote on it.
Sure.
Is this going to happen this time?
It's quite likely that stance will remain. That's being looked into actually by the council legal team. I guess there's potentially two decisions to make. One is we've asked for an interest in the land at Peaks Parkway that the council own. That's one decision. not the same as giving planning permission, and I'm not sure whether you would have to declare an interest to be part of that decision. And then the other one is, of course, for support through the planning process. And what we do know is, historically, because it happened to us at Great Coast, as you rightly say, that various councillors who do regularly attend can't then vote. So we're seeking clarification on both of those. Okay, any other questions, please? It's very quiet.
To come down to earth, Mr. Fenty, in the accounts, we've no working capital left in the club. Can you tell us something about what you intend to do?
The football club sets a budget, as we repeatedly say year in, year out, which is predicated on a loss that an individual is prepared to underpin. And I'm pleased to say that that's giving us a competitive budget, and that's underpinned in terms of loans. So who knows, in the future we might unlock 5 Ryan Bennetts, and there is a potential to repay. If there isn't a potential to repay, is the club vulnerable to repaying that overnight? I've described these loans as benign loans, but at the end of the day, they're not a direct gift to the club. If there is a potential to repay them, then I think, like any of us that was putting money in on that basis, would expect to see it back if it's affordable. So yes, we do. We set a budget that ultimately creates a loss scenario, subject to that loss being picked up by the board of directors, and that's ultimately how we provide a competitive budget. Without doing that, as an example, the last budget round, we projected a loss of £250,000 to provide the plain budget that was provided, and it's a question of whether you're prepared to support that or not, and the answer is yes, I am. So that's broadly how it works. If we don't do that, you would see the playing budget slashed by about 35%, and you ask any manager, where do you think we'll finish up this season, he'll say, tell me what the budget is, Chairman, or whoever he's talking to. And I'm afraid that's how it goes. Yeah, of course there are clubs that buck the trend and get promoted with minuscule budgets, but at the end of the day, by and large, those that's doing well at this level are doing it because they're providing a competitive budget, and I hope ours is sufficient to see us through back into the Football League. Okay.
Did you manage to get any more money out of Mr. Fry from Ryan Bennett?
I've got to tell you, that's a hot potato.
it's still a hot potato.
Philip explained earlier that since he joined our quiet board, we've been able to give him a few jobs to assist us with, and one of them has been actually working up the residue to what we believe is income we should enjoy related to the Ryan Bennett transfer as a result of his ultimate transfer to Norwich. We don't want to say too much about that today, but we're waiting a judgment, and it'll be interesting to see where that lies. We might be wrong, and we might not have an interest in any further proceeds, but our belief is we do. And I've got to say, our resident solicitor admirably fought our case at arbitration actually only 2 days ago. So it's timely that you ask, but unfortunately we can't give you an outcome. But I'm sure now the press will be pressing for. Thank you very much for that. Okay. Any further questions?
Just on a very minor thing, a lot of people have contributed to having their names or relative names on the block paving outside, yes. And it's fading away a little bit. So 2 questions: can they be painted over or whatever so you can actually read them? Sure. And if we do relocate, will those names be perpetuated somewhere in the new building? Okay. Possibly on a wall, rather than letting the rain always. Sure.
I think basically the pockets where the white paint was in is filled with dirt and is becoming obscured over the time. But Ian Fleming will take that back to the stadium manager and
Sorry, Ian.
See where we get to.
Take both points on board.
Yeah, thank you.
Could I think we're very lucky to have an excellent ground in this league to what other clubs, and what you must see when you go round. And I was pleased to see that in the Telegraph that they'd said you'd spent considerable money on the floodlights.
Sure.
And obviously probably a lot was that was the crane hire. But
indeed.
I noticed that the Imperial Avenue lights are working well this season to what they were last year at the Imperial Corner.
Okay, well there's two aspects to the light. Sorry.
The thing is that last year, from the penalty area to the pontoon stand, was very dark. And I'm afraid the goalkeeper didn't help matters by coming out in very dark coloured and light coloured shirts. I don't know how he allowed to do it, but he did. But I wasn't impressed with the colour on Tuesday night.
Of the shirt?
Of the shirt. I think we want a bright colour like the Dale's wearing, or I know we can't wear green in Grimsby, it's very bad.
Okay.
But I think, it's difficult to sometimes see him.
Okay. I guess I don't have the same problems you have for the simple reason I'm colourblind. Anyway, aside of that, just talking about the lights, I mean, we have, I won't say it's great difficulty, because we do work on the upkeep of this ground, and I actually believe it's in the best state it's been in for probably 15 years. The stadium manager is hugely committed. We've had all sorts of free labour input, free materials provided, and what he's done I think is outstanding. If you go around, it's in great shape for what it is. But we can't move away from the fact that these stands were built in Victorian times, two of them at least, started at that stage, and two of them are clearly the oldest structures in football. We've got to move on. Yes, of course, this stand is still fit for purpose. It's pretty good to say the least. It was a forerunner of having boxes. Everybody used to, when I say everybody, clubs like Man United came round to look at this when it was built, to take a lead on the use of boxes and so on. So, yes, we've got this as a good facility, and overall, I think, credit to the stadium manager, he does a great job. But ultimately, we've got to secure a safety certificate to operate. And the complex, we have the fire brigade involved, we have ambulance, we have the council, we have all sorts of criteria that we have to get through to get signed off to be able to operate as a football club. And year in, year out, that's getting more expensive. And turning to the floodlights, you've clearly got one aspect is the lighting. That's a separate matter to the safety in terms of its structure. We've recently spent £70,000 on its structure, just keeping them going. And actually, it's keeping them going. It will need more money in, let's say, 3 or 4 years if we don't actually relocate. And that's what we've got to be thinking and focusing our attention on. In terms of the lighting, I guess yours truly is responsible for the upkeep of the bulbs and the fittings, and they're all aged, as you can imagine. And I do get up there, and I'm pleased to say at the moment everyone's working. But no sooner than you repair them.
No one goes.
Yeah.
Like the Christmas lights, isn't it?
Indeed, indeed. So they are aged fittings. Routinely, I'm stripping the guts out and reinstalling them, and I do that now with the stadium manager, who's learning actually how to do what I've been doing for several years. So I'm pleased about that. It's quite high up there, I can tell you.
Very high.
And when you're hanging off things, even though you've got a safety cord on, it's quite scary.
Can I just say, I think there are very few directors of football clubs who'll be shinning up
Stupid enough.
pylons and replacing bulbs. I think we're very fortunate.
Very
that,
fortunate.
not only that, but many other jobs which John does around the stadium is quite incredible.
Well, thank you for saying that. Yes, so any more questions, please? Yes, Dave.
When at half time, when you're in the upper Findus where I am, there is a queue for the toilets and the cafe and the bar.
Okay.
And a lot of it could be relieved if there was a sign in the tunnel saying queue the other side of this sign to go into the toilet. Because the stairs are blocked continuously.
This is going down into the turnstile area?
Going down, yeah.
Okay. Dave, could I ask if you'd link up with Ian and just clarify exactly what you mean, and let's see what we can do, and if we can make an improvement, we'd love to.
I've mentioned it to stewards, the sign saying queue the other side, towards the far end of the tunnel.
Okay. Well, would you just link up with...
Alleviate it a great deal.
Yeah, would you be happy to link up with Ian at the end?
Yeah.
If you would, please.
Yes.
Just clarify that. Anything else, please?
I just mention the bar and lounge in the main stand.
Can I say, over the last year, how much the facilities have improved? I know the supporters trust have been involved with that, but it was really getting to a sorry state.
Sure.
And the facilities in there have much improved, and it's much more comfortable there, especially with all the television. It keeps everyone's interest. So I thank the supporters trust for that.
Indeed, that's much appreciated, and thank you for saying that, and no doubt something will pass back to the board. But we've got a couple of trust members here, as you know, on our board, and yeah, we can't thank them enough for the progress that's been made in those bars. And thank you for saying such. Okay, have we all done? Well, thank you very much. We'll draw the meeting to a close and look forward to seeing you next year with hopefully more progress.